Okay, can everyone see that? Just a thumbs up, Emma, if you can see the screen, and that sounds great. Brilliant. Okay, lovely to meet you all. Thank you all for coming, whether you're in the room with Emma or you're at home and you're off campus. Well done for getting to the end of your ITT and gaining QTS. I think that's something you need to be really, really proud of. And the fact that you are here tonight for a Welcome to the Early Career Framework really shows that you've done a fantastic job of your initial teacher training. So well done. Before I begin, and just as part of an introduction, just so you know who I am and who's speaking to you, I'm Zoe Thompson. I've taught for 12 years, nearly 13 years, moving from teaching to be a member of SLT, a SENCO of one school, then SENCO of 2 schools across our trust, and now moved into our Teaching School Hub as director of the Teaching School Hub. So my career has changed drastically throughout, and it just shows an example of how yours may go in lots of different paths as you move through your own careers. So now I work for Northern Lights Teaching School Hub, and although I'm here to give you information about your ECF and your induction, I think it's really useful just to give you a slight introduction to what teaching school hubs are and who I work for and what we are for you within your career, so you have a bit of background information on that too. So the session will be to tell you a little bit about teaching school hubs and how we can support you. We look at what the early career framework is and what it consists of in your induction, who's involved in that induction, really that's important, what advice would be really useful for you as you start your induction, and then we'll talk about anything else you would quite like to know about being an early career teacher. Within that, I'll tell you a little bit about who an appropriate body is and the difference between your ECF training programme and that appropriate body service. So, teaching school hubs. You may or may not have come across them at this stage in your career. You may have heard about them. You may have seen something you've read, or maybe an update through university. But we are one of the 87 teaching school hubs in the country. So regardless of where you get your first job or where you work on supply, you will have a local teaching school hub, and we all have a region. So the teaching school I work for is Northern Lights. We are based at Benedict Biscop Church of England Academy in Sunderland, but our region as a hub spans across Sunderland, South Tyneside and Gateshead. We work really closely with Sunderland University, and we meet regularly and we support each other through what we provide for not only students but teachers as they go through their careers. At the minute, we're working with around 200 schools, and those are schools in our region and out of our region, but it's all to deliver this golden thread. So the golden thread right from ITT through to the ECF, as an appropriate body to support induction, and then other CPD. So when you hit maybe year 3 or 4 and you need to continue your study, continue your professional development, and then right into those MPQs when you become more specialists and leaders in your field, whether that's primary or secondary. So as I said, regardless of where you work, there will be a local teaching school hub who can support you. And if it is Sunderland, Gateshead or South Tyneside, we'd love to continue to work with you. This is where the ECF fits in that golden thread I spoke about. So at the moment, you are all completing that initial teacher training. So you won't be trainee teachers for much longer. You'll be moving from the ITT core content framework and into the early career framework. And that is meant to continue your professional development from ITT and seamlessly go into the ECF. So you become an early career teacher and you get continued support as an early career teacher. So it doesn't just end when you get QTS, and that's the whole purpose of that induction, that it's a further 2 years, and it mirrors and it kind of delves deeper into what you've already learned through your ITT. So induction for you as early career teachers is law. So it's statutory. There's a framework in place that when you complete your QTS, your induction will now be for 2 years. Now, that's for your standard teacher who is working full time. It's really important to note that if you do get supply and you get 1 term at a time, that is fine, and that can go towards, your final induction. For example, if you get a job that is part-time in a school and your contract is 0.5, so you're working for 2.5 days a week, you would then complete your induction over 4 years. So you get 2 years worth of full-time training, but not everybody will complete it in that 2 years. Okay. Now, if you were in a school, for instance, and you were working part-time and you were working there for maybe 3 days, 4 days, and you decided actually you can access your training program like a full-time member of staff, you are able to ask for a reduction to your induction, and your appropriate body will be able to look at that evidence and say, actually, they've met the entitlements, they've been accessing the training program as the full-time member of staff, and we'll reduce it to 2 years. So you would be finished the same time as those who have had a full-time job. Okay. There is no time limit to completing your induction. So you don't have to, once you start it, complete it in 4 years or 5 years. But we would be suggesting that you don't wait too long before getting a job or having a break in between jobs. And that if you want, to kind of make the most out of this framework, you want to try and continue your training as soon as possible. The framework it's based on embeds those kind of central key aspects. So you've got behaviour management, pedagogy, curriculum, assessment, and professional behaviours, all words that you will have come across all throughout your ITT, and you cover the learn that and learn how to statements again through these areas. Okay, it's really, really important for you to know that there is 2 elements of your induction. There is this training, which is based around the ECF, but there is also the assessment of you as an ECT, and that is based around the teacher's standards. The same teacher standards that are there for every teacher, but they'll be used to assess your performance at the end of that 2-year induction. Okay, the ECF framework is not an assessment tool, it's a training tool, and you will still be assessed against those standards at the end of your 2 years. So the DFE are the ones who have written the statutory framework. They're the ones who have QA'd all of the training materials and delivered this to our country. Okay, they have made commitments to you as ECTs, and that means that you have 10% off timetable in your first year. That was their pre-statutory framework, so all NQTs used to get that. But the new part of induction is that in year 2, you continue to get time off your timetable. So you get 5% off your timetable in the second year. Now, how that looks as in hours, if you worked full time, you would get around 2.5 hours PPA, which is 10%, and around 2.5 hours ECT time, which is additional. Okay, so a usual primary school timetable would be maybe half a day for each. Secondary, it can be split up into different free periods across the week, and it's whoever kind of writes that timetable for you, but that is your entitlement. You also get the whole ECF curricula and training materials, and you get that training which is free to your school. You get some really high quality training programs, but really importantly, you get a really expert mentor from your school. So this role we'll talk a little bit about throughout our presentation, but this mentor will support you and coach you every week in the first year, and then every fortnight in the second year. And their training is fully funded for your school too. So their training is really, really key to support you throughout yours. So in induction, there are a few roles. So people have different responsibilities, and that may be some staff within your school, but it can also be external. So the people on the screen are those key roles in your induction, and we're going to have a little look at some of the responsibilities of those roles now. I'll explain the appropriate body in a little while, but they will oversee your induction process. So they'll quality assure that you are getting your entitlements in your school. So they look to see whether you are getting an ECF-based training program, whichever route your school choose. They look to see whether you're getting your entitlements, whether you're getting your 10% or 5% off timetable. They will monitor your progress reviews and your end of year assessments to see that whether you're on track and that there's enough evidence for that. And they will be there to support you if you've got any questions or you need any additional training or support. As an ECT, you are responsible for providing the evidence against those teacher standards. So yes, you're responsible for making sure that you do your self-study in your ECT time, that you keep fidelity to whichever programme your school has picked, that you are meeting your deadlines and your targets. But you also need to think at the back of your mind is, I'm meeting the teacher standards because I'm doing this, this and this, and I'm really striving to meet them at the best and the most the soonest possible time. You'll be given an induction tutor in your school. This is usually someone in your SLT, so in senior leadership, but they will coordinate your whole induction. So they'll coordinate your timetable, they will assess you against teacher standards, they will make sure your mentor is meeting with you, they'll make sure the program's working, they'll communicate with the appropriate body, and they will oversee it. Your governing body in school will just ensure another person really, or a group of people who make sure school are compliant. So they look at your ECF policy in your school and make sure that you're getting the requirements that you need and that you're entitled to. You will have heard of the Teacher Regulatory Agency, the TRA. If you're with an appropriate body who collect all of your information, they will send your details to the TRA. So they will, to make sure that they know that you are getting an induction and you've started your induction. But they'll also share with your progress. So how are you doing? Are you on track to meet at the end of year one, and have you passed at the end? Your mentor, this really key person, is the person who meets with you regularly. So they'll give you really effective targeted feedback, they'll coach you, and they'll support you through the programme that you're following for the ECF. Now, if your head teacher is not the induction tutor, sometimes this is the case, they will also key in with the appropriate body and they'll support you. And then lastly, we will talk about who these lead providers are, but you get a lead provider or a delivery partner for one of the routes for the ECF programme, and they provide you with the materials and some face-to-face training throughout your 2 years. Okay, so to summarise that then, you have an appropriate body, you have an induction tutor and mentor, you get a named contact, you have a reduced timetable, an ECF-based training programme, regular mentoring sessions, which are key and happen during the school day, which is really important. You are continuously met and reviewed and set targets. Lesson observations are part of that process. Gathering evidence, but it shouldn't be burdensome, so it won't be any additional work. It will be through those meetings that happen normally, those lesson observations that are already planned. And so when it comes to you signing your progress reviews, it's nothing new. It's everything that you've already talked about with your induction tutor or your mentor. Okay. I know it's lots of information, but we'll just now talk about who the appropriate body is. So your appropriate body is a service who oversee your induction against the teacher's standards. Okay, so they support schools to choose the ECF route they would like to go through. They sign them up with the TRA. They make sure all of your details are on the system and the DFE knows that you've started your induction or you're continuing your induction. They check that you're getting your statutory entitlements. Apologies. So they will do QA checks, they'll drop into school and just make sure that if there's any more support needed, apologies, that it's there and it's given. They will also read your progress reviews and monitor your assessments to make sure there's evidence there that you as an ECT has met the satisfactory kind of outline for that at the end of year one and for the end of year two. Now, as an appropriate body at the Teaching School Hub, we do all of that. We give briefings for ECTs, induction tutors and mentors in September. So when you begin, we'll put webinars on so you know what's going to be coming up, what's expected, what support is here, whose responsibility is X, Y, and Z, and what everyone can do to support each other. And we'd also give you that named contact. So it could be me, it could be another member of the team who we will go through the journey with you. So we'll key in at set times, we'll feedback when your reviews come in, and it'll be that same person. I mentioned lesson observations. Now, these are formal observations, but I do appreciate some schools don't call them formal observations anymore. But these are the observations that are not your drop-ins that your mentor might do or someone in your department might come and do. These are your SLT observations. You'll know who the key people are. Could be your induction tutor, it could be a deputy or a head teacher, and they'll be regular. We expect as an appropriate body that they are at least termly could be half-termly. But what these do is because you're not part of the performance management cycle like the rest of the school, this will be a gauge and an assessment against the teacher standards. So this is where your evidence is built. You'll get feedback from it, and probably areas that are strengths, areas of development, targets set. You may have your books looked at, work scrutiny at the same time, and it all builds a picture of how you're doing against your teacher standards, and that is your evidence of how well you're doing or where your areas are for development. We would say good practice is that you have that relationship where people drop into your classroom, that you drop into others, and you observe other members of the team as an ECT as well, because we know that's the most effective way of picking up fab strategies that you could then use in your own teaching. Okie doke. The early career framework. As I mentioned, the early career framework is a training program. It's not an assessment tool, but there are different routes that your school that you work in may choose to go down. So the first route, which is the most common, is to sign up through a delivery partner like Northern Lights with a lead provider. This is fully funded for schools. DfE have quality checked all of the materials, and schools are then given money to release you and your mentor in the second year. Because that's not usual, because that is a new part of the framework, and that is a really key part for schools to know that is funding they get in addition to what they would usually get in their core budget. The school you go and work at will make a decision, but as I said, the most schools do choose that first route, that fully funded route, because delivery partners like us would have you sign up with us as a school. We would support you with getting access to the online portal and what you need to do for your own self-study. We'd support you with delivery of training. So you would have training each term, which would be face-to-face with other ECTs in the region or out of region, but it would be at a local venue, so you would be able to get to it. But we would also then key in with additional training to support your mentor and to support you as you work through. We'd track your engagement, so if there was any issues coming where you weren't engaged for a few of the blocks, we would support you with how to do that. The other two routes, the second route still does use those materials, but it's not fully funded. Okay, just making sure everyone's on mute. Emma, I'm not sure if you could mute that person because it's not able to on my screen. That might be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so when you are employed and you are working at a school, as I said, there are different lead providers and different delivery partners. On the screen, you can see the six lead providers, who work with a delivery partner like Northern Lights to deliver a programme. They are all based on the ECF. They are not the ECF because that's the framework, but these organisations have developed their own curriculum based around that, and they've been signed off by the DfE to provide you with that induction curriculum. Every teaching school hub is a delivery partner, and every hub have decided to partner up with one of the lead providers. The materials you and your mentor will use for your weekly study are those that facilitators will use when they deliver face-to-face sessions, but they've been written by these lead providers, okay? You do not have to continue your induction over 2 years with the same lead provider. So if you get a job for 1 year in one school who are partnered with Education Development Trust, and that's who you are doing year one with, but then you move out of hub region and you move to Newcastle or get a school in Newcastle who have partnered with Ambition, you can still continue your induction. You would move providers, but that is okay. That will not affect you as an ECT. So at Northern Lights, we have partnered with EDT. Just to give you a bit of an example, because obviously we have the information on the programme, I'm not going to run through it all in major detail, but I will give you an example of what the programme would look like, and it will be similar for all the providers. So EDT are a charity. They are partnered with Sheffield Hallam University to deliver the programme. When you start the programme, you are assigned a mentor. That will be somebody who will meet you weekly or fortnightly, depending on what year you're in, and they'll have coaching strategies to help you reflect on your practice, apply your knowledge. They'll contextualize the material for you. It's really important to let you know now, because I know this will come up when you start the early career framework, is that the ECF statements mirror those you've covered this year or the last 3 years in your ITT core content framework. It's purposeful. Sometimes it may feel repetitive, but it's to get you to think deeper and to think about the skills you've already learned, but how you can apply that as a master of that, and also how to apply it to your own class. So not a placement class, not someone else's class, your class. Now, the ECF is broad. We know that it could be more specific to specialist areas of secondary or the early years or special educational needs schools. However, the purpose of it is that it's contextualized by that expert mentor. So when you are given a mentor in school, they will be they'll be experienced, and what they'll be able to do is, with the induction tutor, is be able to look at the program, identify how that will fit not only for you as where you are on your development, but for the needs of your school, the children and young people that you teach, and your community, and they will be able to contextualize that for you, and that's the purpose. So to show you an example of the program, this is EDTs, but it will be similar with all the providers. These are the 2 years. You can see that year 2 build on year 1, and it allows you to master year 1, but it just steps it up a notch. So you can see in year 1, you would imagine that first block being positive climate for learning. When you start in September, if that's when you start your induction, whenever you start, it could be January, it could be April, the first thing you're going to want to do is establish a really great climate for learning, to build relationships with your class or classes, to make sure your classroom is positive. And then in year 2, you're going to want to do that again. The second year you meet your class or classes, but instead this time, because you can already establish that positive learning, you're going to then embed it. So you're going to do what you did in year 1, probably make some changes. We all do, doesn't matter whether you're 1 year in or 10 years in, but then it looks at how you create a culture for learning. And that is really deep compared to a climate. And you can see all the way through, it steps it up. You're revisiting, you're enhancing, and you're deepening your knowledge. You will have a year under your belt after year 1, and you will have a lot of strategies that work and a lot that you want to adapt. And that's the purpose of revisiting. EDT use a block of learning, and that's things that you will do all of the time now. You learn something, you practice it, you apply it, then you reflect on has it worked and what we can do to make that better. And your mentor will be the person who will support you to do all of this. When you're accessing the program, it will be through webinars, face-to-face, and self-study activities to allow you to do those 3 things. Okay, so lastly, I know we've done a whistle-stop tour, and I know it's a lot to take in, but lastly, I spoke to some ECTs who are in year 1 now, and they give some advice, and I thought that would be really, really useful to share with you as you embark on your journey as a brand new teacher. They said to me, to share with you, to meet your deadlines. And I think I would agree with all of these 12 years in. To meet those deadlines, to remember that you are a new teacher, you're on a journey, you're not a finished article. And actually, as a teacher, none of us are finished articles, that you're on a journey of professional development in a brand new school for some of you. Some of you might end up in the places that you've been on placement, but that give yourself a break. You are learning, and it is okay to get things wrong. It's okay to ask for help. Always stay professional. Be mindful what you say in public. I thought that was a really interesting point, but it's really key. You build relationships up with your staff in school, and that's fantastic, but just be mindful what you say and whose ears are around. Be reflective. Definitely go into it with an open mind. Be reflective when it comes to your ECF. Know that you might have covered something before. Know that you're actually fantastic at these things, some of these things, but going with an open mind and with your mindset of that we're continuously learning. There's always something we can pick up on and we can develop. As I said, ask for help. They said raise any concerns. And if you're given advice, act on it. And I thought that was really valuable. They did say that there'll be times that you laugh and times that you may cry. And I think as a teacher, hand on heart, there will be those times, but just know that there are good times and bad times in in your whole year. And always make time for you, so your friends, your family, because you'll always find more work to do. So hand in hand with meeting deadlines, having a to-do list, being really organised, equally have a balance and make sure that your well-being is noted too, and take that time in your induction to ensure that you're supported, but you're giving other people in your life your time too. I hope that was really helpful. I would love to get some questions if you've got any, because I do appreciate I talked about appropriate body, ECF, providers, lots of probably either new or familiar words. So I will stop the recording now, and then I'd love to hear if anyone does have any questions or anything they would like to come off mute and raise their hand.